Kia ora, everybody. Welcome to this session. We are have the pleasure today of talking with Irina and learning more about her work. And I just wanted to, my name is Trudy, and I just wanted to open up the meeting on behalf of the Intercreate organization with the karakia to acknowledge our meeting today. And this is a karakia from a kaumātua that we worked with in Taranaki for many years, named Te Hurangi Waikirepuru. E te hui, whaia te mataranga kia marama, kia whae taki ngā mahi katoa, tu maia, tu kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa. So that karakia basically is just saying, we work hard to, focus on those things that are most important, and giving love out and receiving love and for all. It's the kind of one summary of it. And then I'll pass on to Nina to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. I have been with Intercreate from 2006, together with Rudy and with some others over the years. And I am very happy to see Ira here with us. With Ira, we have been together at Ars Electronica, at her own hometown several times, you name it. And now she is here with us at Intercreate. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Trudy. Thank you, Ira, for being here today. I will just give a little context of the Cosmo Imaginaries conversations that we are having with Intercreate. This is connecting different creative practices and emerging methods of exploring outer space with a real emphasis on transcultural perspectives. The program Cosmo Imaginaries began as part of Ecologies Technologies with Schumacher College, but now with Intercreate, it connects with this long history of art, science, and media art engaging with ecologies and outer space. So excited to speak with Ira and hear about HONF and the incredible work. The annual UFO Festival, the International SETI Conference, there's this amazing mix of transdisciplinary approaches, which is bringing new publics to engage with the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the search for life beyond Earth, with outer space. And also interested to hear about Indonesia's Space Science Society, an imaginative framework for the exploration of space from the perspectives of citizens. And this incredible weaving together of astronomy, space science, space exploration, and space art is really what HONF has been holding for decades. As they say on one of their project pages, they bring together artists, scientists, astronomers, and astrophysicists to understand the universe we are within, using both tools and ideas of science and those of art. So we thank you so much, Ira. Today we begin with a presentation, and then when you have completed, we will have some time for dialogue and questions. Thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you, Kate, and then Trudy, and then Nina. I'm really happy to be here, finally. and also really happy to share, because it's in Indonesia, this talks about SETI is new things, and then it needs also a lot of actually support, and it's not also well known. At first, we have call it SETI Festival long time ago, symposium for SETI Festival, but it was not really popular. So this last 3 years, we changed it into Indonesia UFO Festival, which is UFO is much more popular. So it's getting more people to engage with the topic. but I do have a presentation, and we'll talk more about what is HONF, and then why we also interest into like this space science, and then DIY space science, and then how actually we try to make the people and then citizen engage with the topic. So HONF is, like Kate said before, it was a place actually, kind of like a space, an open space, a place for people to just hang out at the beginning, and then we can like confuse like what we call, because when we said like you are an artist, not all of us and like an artist is actually people that gather at HONF is from interdisciplinary. So this is what we call HONF. It's like one who gets excited about things that no one else cares about can join HONF. There are no membership, so it is open. And this is like the space actually at the beginning of HONF. It's just a little garage in the middle of Yogyakarta. Nina was here also like a couple of years ago, and then it's open for 24 hours. And some people call it hackerspace, some people call it a lab, some people call it studio. So it's actually just an open space that open for everybody. And then at 2011 until 2013, we that garage cannot afford our ideas anymore, and we trying to kill each other because it's just too small. And then we divided ourselves into 3 labs. So one is FUFOC, the Extraterrestrial Study Center, that focusing on the DIY space science. And then we had HONFAB lab that focusing on the digital fabrication lab. And that's the first web lab in Southeast Asia. And we have also HON Factory that accommodate like discourses, and then also exhibition and artistic creation regarding to digital and media culture. And then we do have a lot of workshops from children until adults, and then we also do a lot of experience, mostly fail. And yeah, this is some experiments that we did. And then we also like think tank project between the universities, and then locally and abroad. And then we do also like some joint research together. Not only with university, but also like some institution like for example, LAPAN in Indonesia, it's focusing on research and education, and also some other formal institution, and also informal institution. I will show you some example of project and works of HONF. This is called IPSC. It was at 2010 and 2011. This project called Intelligent Bacteria Saccharomyces cerevisiae is an artistic project that about simple thing actually, making wine from the local fruits. That time, because the government raised the tax of alcohol in drinking alcohol in Indonesia, so thousands people died because they just mix everything that they can drink, and it caused a lot of many people died. So with one university in Jogja, we asked actually how to make a safe drinking alcohol, and the one professor said that actually that's very easy. So we did this project together, how to make wine from local fruits. And this project is actually very popular until now and become like creative economy and also social innovation and also save a lot of people life. And then this project called Micronation Macronation is about sustainable project in food and energy. So it was at 2013. We work with many institutions and local farmers. We had the satellite, and then we make kind of like local net because the internet was difficult and not like right now. And then so the farmers in the remote area, they can also have an access to information when is the best time to harvest, and then when is the best time to plant, and they can share also among the farmers. And then we make also a sustainable system for farming, especially in the rice field. And then so the promise and the aim at the last year, actually 2023, Indonesia have independence in food and energy. But it was a long project and not supported by the government. But still, some farming areas still have this system and very sustainable until right now. And it is the presentation, and it was shown actually at the IPI headquarter and then Moscow Science Museum, and then as well in Yogyakarta at Langgeng Art Foundation. And this is another project about the research for the main river in Yogyakarta, which is sacred because it's connected the mountain to the sea, but it is very polluted. So we work again with some university and then joint research how to combat the pollution in this river with the bacteria, and also we make a water purified system. And then working also with the citizens along the banks, so they can have a system that can purify the water of the river, so they can use this water for their needs. And it was this project, the preposition shown at the New York New Museum in New York. But HONF is very boys club. So one researcher actually came and asked, is there any like the female at HONF, is there any like uncomfortable issues at HONF? And we said like no that time. But then after that we tried to review again, is there any, because we are working with the art, science, and technology, which is very male case. And then we make an incubation only for female and transgender that time in open source software and hardware. And we found out that actually we have different perspective how to see science and technology, very different than male perspective. So we continue this initiative and we make a collective as a spin-off project from HONF called XX Lab to hack this gender gap in art, science, and technology. And then one of the project is called Soya Couture, is how to make a new sustainable material, and also at the same time is actually how to combat the pollution in the river, because Indonesia is one of the biggest tofu, soya production and tofu and tempeh production in the world. But it's very unsustainable because they just threw the liquid waste to the river, which is very polluted. And for 100 years, I think there is no solution. But through this very simple biological process, actually you can turn this liquid waste into a new material that that almost kind of like a leather. So it's a vegan leather, and then you can use for anything, any purpose. You can use for a fashion, you can use for furniture, and a lot of other possibilities. And this were one Ars Electronica Next Idea prize. And then there is this other project from Horn called so this is called ungovernable structure. So this project is actually how to make we work with the 5 kingdom of life, and then how the connection to the other entities in the universe from this 5 kingdom of life in the earth, and then with the other source outer the earth, and then how it's actually created kind of like a structure that sustainable. It was experiment, and then we also make it into performance, but it's actually the experiment is not very good. It was failed, but it worked. And then how actually the sun and then the moon, and then also we use like astronomical to conduct this structure, and then to make a form as a architectural structure, and also like performative sound and audio visual for audiovisual performance. And then this is like an initiative also at HONF that focusing on space science. So it's called VUVOC, and then VUVOC also working with the community called Indonesian Space Science Society, that it is creating a lot of projects, initiative, and then issue about the space science. And then one of the project actually chosen by NASA to accompany their exhibition. So NASA have this big exhibition about the human adventure, the title, and then they choose VUVOC, Vensa, and VUVOC as part of the exhibition as an artist that accompany NASA alongside that exhibition of human adventure. And then there is another project by Mars Society. So one of the founder of HONF, and then the member of VUVOC is chosen by Mars Society and NASA to join their Mars simulation project. So how if human will live on Mars as an artist, because they need actually an artist how to deal with the how if you are living in another space. And then the first is actually they did in the desert in Utah, and the second they did in the submarine in Japan, and then actually the third it was supposed to do in Antarctica, but it was COVID, so it was canceled. But actually it was good, yeah, in the COVID, so you you will know how to survive with this. But I think with the travel it was difficult. I don't think I can play this, but this is a performance actually also with NASA. So we built a lot of antennas outside the performance areas and used the body as the conductor, and make it into a performance so the people also can hear them, then they can participate all the signals from the outer space. But I cannot play the video, but we will move to FIMARS. It's ongoing project actually that we developed from last 2 years, but it's still ongoing. It's very difficult, and we want to build kind of like research stations. It's called FOVOC Mars Analog Research Station, where actually citizens can come and they can also do their own research here, and they can also like imagine actually what is like living in space, or but it's also like combining with the local wisdom and the knowledge that we already had in Indonesia, and then combining also with cutting edge technology, and then and they can also imagine what is future is. But it's still ongoing, and we hope we can get more funding and more people involved and more collaboration with the local local institution or local communities, also as well as international institution or communities. And we have also festival every year. It's called Indonesia UFO Festival. Like I said before, it's called SETI Festival, but then it was, I think, for the people in Indonesia, it is kind of like difficult to understand what is SETI mean. And then when we change it into Indonesia UFO Festival, it's become very popular. A lot of people engage, and a lot of a lot of institutions also collaborate with us and then a lot of activities inside the festival. There is a symposium, exhibition, workshop, and then camp, alien camp, UFO camp, and then performance also. Yeah, many activities that actually involve people. And then they are very enthusiastic because we also make a lot of workshop and education program in the festival. Recently, actually, we open Kampung Alien. I don't know if you know Kampung. Kampung is kind of like a village, so it's alien village. So we're working with the local communities in one village to make this alien village, and this is we also open a residency program there with small DIY laboratory about the space science. And in there is actually you can do like observation, and then also getting to know what is the local people think actually about the space, because in here is always mix actually between the knowledge, the recent knowledge, and also with the mythology, what they believe, and then what they understand about space is sometimes very mixed. And then we try actually like to make a new discourse and new knowledge about like between this local wisdom and local mythology, and then with today's knowledge and technology. And we have like open set studio, but we call Indonesia UFO Day. So in a day you can talk about like space science, and then do a lot of activities there. And then this is a recent project from HONF. It's called Galactica version to Dharma Garden, which is shown at the Art Science Museum in Singapore. So this project is the second version of the Galactica. The first version is actually about how if we do terraforming in Mars, or in not only in Mars but in another planet. And then the second version actually we reverse it. How if the other entities actually came to the earth and what they do, how they do start living. So, and in Java, there are a lot of myths about like this god and goddesses that come from the sky and start living. And one of the very famous goddess is called Lakshmi goddess that come from the sky and start living. And then on earth, and then there is even a temple in East Java that a special for this goddess. And then there are a story how this goddess created life on earth. And we started to do a research about this mythology, and then we use a moss actually to represent how actually the other entities from other space come to earth and creating a living with the moss. And it's kind of like a wheelchair. And then but at the same time it's also like how people we ask people how they will see about like space and the connection between human and space. And this is kind of like a symbol between and the harmony between humans and the universe. So this is there is this mini terraforming in every jar, and there is a big bioreactor in the middle that give an energy to the kind of like a spacecraft. So I think that's it from me. I hope this clear and good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's such rich work, and I really appreciate you showing us these amazing images. It really brought it to life. You've also given us a new way of knowing ourselves with the definition of Honf as the one who gets excited about things that no one else cares about. So I think we are all Honf. I really, really enjoy that. I guess my question, and this actually thinks back for the last Cosmo Imaginary session we held, the scholar and artist Juan Francisco Salazar joined, and he uses space imaginaries to explore how cultural narratives and media and the way we use technologies shape our perceptions of the Earth and outer space, and this entanglement of cultural contexts and colonialism and the ecological crisis, and the importance of bringing through living ecological imaginaries in the new space age that is unfolding, because the imaginaries we have of, or the very common imaginaries that there are of space industries are very macho science, technology, visions of domination. So I really appreciate the work that you are growing there, kind of opening up this rich, particularly unique cultural context of Jakarta in Indonesia, and the connection as a region with its own particular kind of autonomy and culture. And so, you know, with that emphasis on local wisdom and the commons and particular myths, which actually seems to connect in some way to the commons spirit of SETI at Home, the project in the early 2000s, which had millions of volunteers worldwide using their own computers to analyze radio signals for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Like, I feel there's this extremely healthy democratizing of space exploration and distinctness, distinction about what you were doing. So when it comes to bringing together a commons around outer space, how do you in your wildest dreams, how would you imagine this involving with space industries as they are unfolding in Indonesia, but also perhaps in the community, in the SETI community worldwide?
Yeah, I think you were right when you said like this democratizing actually what is SETI, and then like what is like this space science, because I think it is very like a Western perspective, and this is also like very when we see also like the discourse, and then it's very also like male gaze, while actually when we saw actually what we had, like the local knowledge that we had, is like the opposite actually. Because when we see like, for example, like when we ask what is like alien, like to the people in here in Indonesia, like they always say like this is the green man. But when we see like really like can you see like when we discuss more further, actually they see like, I'm not sure actually that is a green man, because like some of us like so, but it is like very different creature. And then all different. And when we said like, so if you see like what is in mythology, for example, like we have this Valhalla and so on, we have this actually this spacecraft, but then we said this is very, but that is also very different what is Hollywood said about like this about like spacecraft and outer space and or other entities. So actually, because we don't have this understanding and how it makes together, and then in here also we don't have like from even from academic research, like we don't have this. So it's still actually we still kind of like talking about science fiction. So this actually this festival, this conference about SETI, and this movement is actually kind of like meeting that what we talk is just like science fiction, and non-science become something that creating a new knowledge toward the future actually. What is what we had like, and then what is in the world, and then had, and then when we combine actually is creating a new knowledge and new understanding.
Yeah, you can really feel that.
I want to mention, Irina, that I saw your work, the last work that you showed at the Art Science Museum in Singapore, and it was amazing. It was such a creature of its own, you know, and it just showed so much energy and so many things going on, and it was, yeah, a fascinating beast to behold, and I took a lot of videos.
Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah. I guess I was curious too to ask about like, you know, you've done so much with engaging the community, like a local community that wouldn't normally potentially interact with, you know, kind of creative activity like that. But it's have you found the going to them with certain kind of questions or like fun provocations has been sort of an opening point to let people explore and do creative things without worrying about art or worrying about, you know?
Yeah, I think community is kind of like important for her because it's also showing us the direction actually, what we should do. Sorry, because when we also work in the social innovation, so but actually our work is always like driven by this community, like what they need actually, not like what we want to make, but what they need. For example, like for SETI is also like because there are so many enthusiasts from the communities surround us that interest to what is SETI, and then it's already like a lot of communities but divided in the small communities that talk about it, but it just become kind of like a rumor. They don't really like dare to talk because it's like it's kind of like nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But then so the need from them is like, this is not nonsense at all, this is like something that important as well, like for them, because this, and then it's conduct also like a lot, some technology that they can use also for daily life.
Mm-hmm.
So not only like researching about like something, but it's also like maybe they can use it also like for apa,
Making their own alcohol.
yes.
Extract alcohol. It's great.
Or like this radio astronomy, they can also use for a lot of things, not only like searching like for alien, but they can also use for farming as well and
Yeah.
other things.
So in terms of like finding those needs of the community, how do they kind of arise for, how do they become clear and obvious for you, like which things to focus on? Is it just conversations, like discussion groups in the amongst the wider group of HOMF, or how does that kind of emerge?
It's actually we make it kind of like, first is a lot of workshop, like through workshops, and then kind of engage, and then of course like discussion, a lot of discussion, and then also when they come to the exhibition and saw the works and they're curious, and then after that they be part of the next project, and
Yeah,
it's kind of
cool.
like very organic way.
It's nice. I like it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about that sort of thing just, but I'm in a very rural situation. So, you know, like there aren't exhibition spaces or really things like that. But there's always a way where you have enough curiosity and creativity.
Yeah, I think like it's also like the first there is a keyword actually, like to gain their curiosity about things. So why we made this installation in the rural area about like a big alien, which is
Yeah,
actually kind of like a silly, but then it's it makes
amazing. Looks beautiful
people
too.
that is actually curious what is this and
Yeah.
what is, and then start from that conversation, and then they're curious, and then they ask, and then they start talk about like their needs to find out what is behind this alien thing. So I think yes,
ma'am.
that's one of the method.
Yes, I was also always so impressed how you could bring together totally different ideas, activities, and situations, so that you had some of the exhibitions or some of the art projects right out in the rural area. I remember that river or something we went around, and also that you mix SETI and astronomy, and then also rural areas with where I remember that guy who came from some place in the middle of nowhere and went back to villages to reteach them agricultural procedures which were historically in that area, but they have been changed into something. And now they got back again the same type of higher yield because they went back and repeated this. And all these mixtures of things which are still while they remain mixtures, at the same time they are able to blend together. And for example, here where I live in Canada, I mean, we talk a lot about environmental issues, but this is happening at the university conferences. I mean, I don't know very many projects where people go out, and do it with the people who work at the earth or so forth. So there's a lot of yap, and the less collaborative action, where it's really collaboration, not just yap.
Yes, but I think there is also like a structure in here, like social structure in here that make it like more easier. While I live in Honf is based in Yogyakarta, which is like it's like a big village actually, not even like a town. And then the structure of there is this what can I say? Because it's a monarch actually inside the republic, which is and this an ancient kingdom from the past, which is actually is also like change the society behavior. It's not really like urban. Jogja is never been like a very, very urban, but it's still there are a lot of engagement like here from each other. Even though like I'm now Hanf is now placed in like in the kampung area, like very near to the city and very near, but it still have this vibe of living in the kampung and communal way. And that's I think like also how it is the collective is very successful in Yogyakarta. Like many collectives is successful in Yogyakarta because it's like they are always working also with the society surround them and the environment surround them. So like I said before to Trudy, it's actually they are the direction, not us. So if we have to work also with the university, like in the think tank project, we also like involve this community and the environment like surround us, and they are the direction, not the university. So I think how actually we also survive this more than these 2 decades because of the how this we are being supported also by the community. and the societies around us.
Can you say a few words about that young women's group with whom you worked and you got the Ars Electronica award? Please, just a few words.
Yeah, the XX Lab is it was at the presentation. There is shortly about XX Lab is because HONF was a boys club actually. So when we made this incubation only for female and transgender that time to do this open science and then open source software and hardware. So we have 3 days workshop for this, not workshop but incubation. So we teach each other basically, and then we understand actually we have a different perspective or also even different way or methods, like even how to make a circuit is very different. We love many colorful cables, while when we are working with the boys it's always like red and white, red and black, which is very boring. But we understand, or how we code is actually very different. Like we do the same project, but how we code, how we program something. For example, when we program this Arduino or Raspberry Pi, like they don't understand what we write, what we wrote. Well, actually, it is the same, and we said like we don't understand yours also. Like, and then we realized there is actually like a different way of understand this arts and science. For example, for us is much more comfortable if we use the kitchen as a biological laboratory, because it's very familiar. It's like cooking, and then for us it's like very easy, but for them it's like, no, you have to do in the right way, but this is right actually. And so that's about XX Lab. Like we also like encourage like others to do like this science and technology, because and then we find a way, the easiest, much more easier way to do, and it's not so scary, like to do science, to do to do technology is not so scary anymore for female and the other gender rather than male, and also for the kids as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You really are, you're doing it. And I think really showing us all how to do it with responsiveness to communities, with co-creating with communities, and actually completely changing the conversation. And I feel like that's also what you're doing with the SETI conversation. Say with the International SETI conference that you hold, you're radically refiguring what SETI could be. And I love this this radical commons emphasis that you are working through. It really strikes me that the search for extraterrestrial life demands that, just because how could we know anything about it? It's so unknown. It would necessitate collaboration across the planets. It would necessitate collaboration between science and technical instrumentation and politics and philosophy. And I think that it's actually very compelling how you are holding that, and the way in which you visually communicate it too. I adore the design and the illustration that communicate these imaginaries. So I guess my final question would just be that there is this new energy across the SETI community to engage with post-detection SETI, that the question of what would happen societally and in complex ways in the event of a confirmed detection. And this kind of refers to researchers like Catherine Denning and Carol Oliver, who are working on fresh post-detection protocols, which would be ideally internationally agreed to, and also with the Scottish SETI post-detection hub. There is a great researcher there called George Profitoliotis, who is working on scenarios, imagining a confirmed detection in 2033 and building the details of what that scenario could be with this interdisciplinary network of SETI researchers. And, you know, part of what Cosmo Imaginaries is seeking to do is share these scenarios with groups of people around the planet and find ways that we can invite response, like performance perhaps, or even a dinner celebration is one way we could respond to a scenario, or a weaving workshop someone has instigated. And this idea of making futures research a little less controlled and arid, and really hydrating it, you know, hydrating it with the varieties of culture, which frankly futures research has not invited into its study significantly even now. So I would love to consider how HONF could respond to this scenarios workshop that the Scottish group has been working on for the last year, and to see what you do with it. You might rip it up, you might critique it and transform it in ways that, you know, the Scottish group could not even think about.
Yeah, we'll love to. Actually, we also like looking forward actually like with the what is happening also like in another countries or in the world. Like I think my colleague Vanessa is also like be part of this conversation, and then but this also like how actually we also translate it in a way that the people in here also understand. That's also like important, like to create like this language that understandable. But there's also like in other way we also like give the conversation in here that happen in here also to the world, because and I think that's the most important thing. Like there is this connection, there is this always like future collaboration. There is like a hope, and then in a way, and then a way to understand it more, because I think it's kind of like a bit, I don't know, like strange topic, like to talk about like about the unknown. And then because for me itself, it's like for me personally itself, like for the first time, like I know about it, like I was like, what is this SETI focus, like about the unknown. And then like we talk about like the technology for the now, and then for the future that is like seems like very far away. And then what is the importance of it? But actually, by looking back, like to like for the example, like the myth, the tale, the mythology, there is actually like the connection that yeah, as a human we have to like always like to look forward to see the future, like to think about like what is the next. And then we are also part of the universe, and then there's also very connected to the microcosmos and macrocosmos. that in our culture is very important. And then I think, but that's also that we should be part also with the others in this planet. So
Truly,
that's-
there's something about islands, which I was, the archipelago, in some sense, the ideal would be to have all of these different islands being having autonomous, sharing their own work on their own terms, and unfortunately, technoscience as it stands is really very biased to the USA, to European. So, I dream that with you. And I hope that we will keep on creating in a conversation, and that we may be able to make some things happen that amplify and bring to some of the networks that we have what you're doing, because it's rare, and you have been doing post-detection SETI, for decades. So the expertise has been really built, and the muscle has been really built. So we'll close the call. Do you have any final questions, Nina or Trudy?
Yeah, because also just to mention that I saw Vishna's work at the Art Science Museum at the same time, in that same visit in the Mars exhibition. So that was fantastic. Well, it was the work that Irina just showed, with the testing of the modules and the, installing at different places and working with the local people to create this like space agency, and fantastic, so full of imagination and exploration, and yeah, just fantastic. And yeah, just a thought on when you talked, Irina, about the, it's so lovely that you wrapped that thought in about the connection, the universe, and the connection we all have to it, and the micro, the macro, and those things, and just I see lots of correlation there in terms of what we as we learn about Māori tongue or Māori culture here, that involves a lot of those same elements, and that interconnection with everything, every living being, and the living beings, and those things, including rocks, and including the entire universe. So the relational view. So yeah, just to close on that, for us can be a nice closing karakia, seen as the opening karakia opened up the space, and then we use a closing karakia to close the space. So that karakia is quite a well-known one, and it goes unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapunui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua i te aratakata. Koiara e rongo, whakaere ake ki runga, kia tina, tina, kui e, tai ki e. So the English translation of that is, the one that I have, is draw on the supreme sacredness to clear, to free the heart, the body, and the spirit of mankind. Rongo, suspended high above us, i.e. in heaven, draw together, in there. Affirm, sorry. Yeah, so thank you, Arina. Lovely to chat with you. So amazing. Very inspiring.
To everybody, thank you.